Now, some people worry that silence means isolation. Not at all. Silence is not loneliness, it's alignment. It's time spent aligning your actions with your intentions. You still connect, you still contribute, but you do it from fullness, not need. That's how leaders are made. They don't announce leadership, they embody it. They walk into the room with quiet certainty, and people can feel that they've been working in private. When you cultivate that kind of presence, opportunities start finding you. You don't chase them, you attract them. I call that the law of pull. The opposite of push. Push is loud, pull is quiet. Push says, notice me. Pull says, I've become valuable, you'll notice eventually. And the marketplace always notices value. You don't need a megaphone when you've got mastery. Here's another Jim Rohn truth. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. When you do that, in silence, everything else expands naturally. Your income, your influence, your peace. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is space for growth, for wisdom, for divine timing. So the next time you're tempted to speak prematurely, remember the farmer. He doesn't shout at the seed, he just trusts the process. He knows that spring will follow winter if he keeps tending the soil. That's faith. Disciplined, quiet faith. Faith, my friends, is invisible labor. You can't measure it with applause, you measure it with consistency. Faith is doing the right thing, even when there's no proof yet that it's working. People ask me all the time, Jim, how do I know if I'm on the right path? And I tell them, you know you're on the right path when you don't have to announce it. You simply feel it. When your actions and your values line up, when your habits quietly match your dreams, that's when you're walking the right road. See, faith is like compound interest. Every small deposit of trust, every quiet decision to do the right thing, every day you stay disciplined, it all adds up. And one day you wake up realizing that your silent work has created a life others can only dream about. Now, let me tell you why silence and faith make such a powerful combination. Silence gives you the room to listen to others, to yourself, and to life. When you stop talking, you start hearing. You hear ideas that were hiding behind the noise. You notice opportunities that used to pass you by. You catch wisdom in conversations you once ignored. I remember being broke and sitting at the back of a seminar hall. I didn't say a word the entire session, and I walked out with a single sentence that changed my life. Profits are better than wages. That one sentence, heard in silence, made me wealthy. See, if I had been talking, explaining, interrupting, I would have missed it. That's the danger of always broadcasting. You can't receive when you're transmitting. The quiet student learns fastest. The quiet builder grows strongest. The quiet saver retires richest. Silence multiplies what you take in and eventually what you give out. So when you combine faith with silence, you create momentum. Faith says a keep going. Silence says a focus. Together they whisper the formula for freedom. Now let's talk about financial freedom again, because this is where quiet faith pays the biggest dividends. The path to wealth isn't a loud sprint, it's a quiet march. Month after month, you pay yourself first. You live below your means. You invest what you save. You reinvest what you earn. You stay patient while others show off. And one day, suddenly to everyone else but not to you, you're free. They'll call you lucky, but you'll know it was never luck. It was quiet persistence. A wise man once said, if you stay long enough at the table of discipline, the feast of success will eventually be served. But remember, the feast takes time to come. Now when that feast arrives, that's when you can start sharing your story. Because by then, your story is truth, not theory. Truth inspires far more than theory ever could. That's why the most powerful mentors are often the quietest to achieve. They've spent years building, learning, earning. When they speak, every word has weight because it comes from experience. So what does this mean for you? It means that every unseen hour matters. Every morning you wake up early to read instead of scroll. Every time you save instead of spend. Every time you choose work over words. Those are your silent investments. Your habits are sending signals, not through words, but through outcomes. Sooner or later, people can tell who's serious. They can feel it. One day I was flying from Los Angeles to Chicago. The gentleman beside me recognized me and said, Mr. Rohn, you always seem so calm. Don't you ever worry about competition? I smiled. "Oh, not real," I said. "You can't compete with someone who's focused on becoming, not comparing?" He looked puzzled. I told him, "Most people spend their energy trying to look busy. I spend mine trying to get better. That's the secret." Silence shifts your focus from performance to progress. You stop worrying about how you appear and you start investing in who you are. Now let's turn that into financial wisdom. You don't have to announce your investments. You don't have to brag about your budget. You just quietly practice intelligent behavior until your life speaks for you. Remember, the goal isn't to impress, it's to improve. Here's a formula I give my students. Earn right arrow, save right arrow, invest right arrow, serve. But there's a hidden fifth step between each. Silence, you earn quietly, you save quietly. You invest quietly, you serve quietly. And the result? Freedom loudly. Because freedom can only come from internal order. Let me give you another story. A friend of mine started a small landscaping business. For the first 2 years, no one noticed him. He worked alone, drove an old truck, wore the same hat every day. But he kept records. He reinvested his profits. He learned accounting. He studied leadership. 5 years later, he owned 10 trucks and a team of 50 people. When I asked him how he did it, he said, "A mister. Rohn, I just kept my mouth shut and my books open." That's good advice, because when your books are open, meaning you're learning, you don't need to open your mouth. Now some people worry that silence means isolation. Not at all. Silence is not loneliness, it's alignment. It's time spent aligning your actions with your intentions. You still connect, you still contribute, but you do it from fullness, not need. That's how leaders are made. They don't announce leadership, they embody it. They walk into the room with quiet certainty, and people can feel that they've been working in private. When you cultivate that kind of presence, opportunities start finding you. You don't chase them, you attract them. I call that the law of pull. The opposite of push. Push is loud, pull is quiet. Push says, "Notice me." Pull says, "I've become valuable." You'll notice eventually. In the marketplace, always notices value. You don't need a megaphone when you've got mastery. Here's another Jim Rohn truth. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. When you do that, in silence, everything else expands naturally. Your income, your influence, your peace. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is space. Space for growth, for wisdom, for divine timing. So the next time you're tempted to speak prematurely, remember the farmer. He doesn't shout at the seed. He just trusts the process. He knows that spring will follow winter if he keeps tending the soil. That's faith. Disciplined, quiet faith. Now, when you start growing quietly, something fascinating happens. You begin to accumulate compound confidence. Each small promise you keep to yourself adds another layer to your character. Each private victory, getting up early, studying when no one else will, saving that extra $10 instead of spending it, becomes proof that you can trust yourself. That's wealth in its purest form. Because before you ever earn financial freedom, you must earn self-trust. And self-trust grows in silence. See, the loud world tells you to post your progress to prove you're moving. But the quiet world, the world of discipline and mastery, whispers a just move. It's the whisper that makes millionaires. It's the whisper that keeps a man reading when the crowd has gone to sleep. You want to know how I built my own fortune? It started in a small empty apartment with a borrowed desk and a notebook full of goals. I didn't tell anybody about it. I just wrote, someday I'll have time freedom. Someday I'll help others build theirs. Then I went to work. Day by day, lesson by lesson, sale by sale. I wasn't chasing applause, I was chasing competence. My friends, is quiet power. Now let's talk about how silence protects your energy. When you talk too much about your plans, you scatter energy like loose change. Every explanation, every justification, every premature boast, it costs a little focus. But when you keep it in, it accumulates like interest. That stored energy turns into momentum. That's why I say a discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. When you practice the discipline of silence, you carry ounces now to avoid tons later. Here's another principle. Never broadcast your preparation. You don't have to tell people you're reading 10 books this year. Just read them, because if you read them, life will notice. Life has a way of rewarding quiet preparation with loud opportunity. The world is always watching, even when it seems it isn't.